Good morning and welcome to day 191 of the Chronological Bible in a Year. Today we are in Psalms 107, 111, 112, 113, and 114. But today I wanted to draw your attention to a causal relationship that you will see over and over again throughout Scripture, but particularly in Psalm 107 and in verses 6, 13, 19, and 28. So we see this phrase repeated 4 times. It says, "Of those the Lord gathered out of Egypt while in the wilderness, then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them out of their distress." That's Psalm 107, verse 6. These are these 4 instances of this phrase occurring in Psalm 107. They cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them out of their distresses. But before we get into that text, I was hoping you will bear with me over the next few Tuesdays as I attempt to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak. You see, I have a school assignment to do the following: articulate my personal life journey and its impact on my current journey, which sounds a lot like a testimony. But my intent is not to focus the spotlight on me, but to focus it on God. So that leads us to the theme of today's video. When life gets tough, the weak cry out for help. Our entire world economic system is built on a set of monetary scales upon which balance the lives of billions of people. It is built on the premise that a human being has a monetary value, and that time and energy and resources have monetary units of value. But God's intent and design from the initial point of creation is that we both live and participate in a society that supports and cares for others above ourselves. Regardless of how rich, popular, clever, nice, or pretty the people around us are, we are to treat them as more important than us. Unfortunately, we are inundated by our senses and our covetous hearts with the temptation to ignore God and go wherever the crowd or our own foolish inclinations and our selfish pride lead us. I personally grew up with a strong sense of my own value and a low sense of everyone else's. I was taught to value independence and creativity over and above getting into a good school, getting good grades, or getting a job that made a lot of money. But if I could get a job that allowed me a lot of personal and professional autonomy, made a bleep ton of money, and allowed me time to travel and enjoy both the finer and coarser pleasures of the world, that was considered the ideal. This charity was limited to people in our immediate family and friends, but it was rarely without strings or some kind of psychic burden. Even coming to Christ, I didn't have a crisis moment where I humbled myself before the Lord per se, but I did recognize that what he had in his word was truer than anything I had in my world. I had an intellectual conversion or confession at first, and a knowledge that grew over time. But saying, I don't disagree with the Bible, is very different from saying the Lord is my light and my salvation. My walk was evolutionary, not revolutionary. My intellectual understanding of the word may have grown, but my character was fundamentally flawed by what I later discovered were patterns of unresolved anger with those closest to me, including God. Yep, anger towards God. Anger fueled by a fundamentally transactional view of relationships. If I want an outcome of Z, then I need to do X, and God, or whoever the third party is, will do Y, and I will get Z. So, I mean, it's simple math, right? Even God can figure this one out, right? Yep, anger toward God because he wasn't blessing my mess. My heavenly ATM machine. He wasn't fixing my broken family. He wasn't blessing my credit card debt. He wasn't smiling at me in pleasure when I resented other people's lives. He wasn't blessing my view of people as either a source of entertainment or an obstacle to get around. James says in chapter 4, verses 2 and 3, "Where do wars and fights come from among you? Do they not come from your desires for pleasure that war in your members? You lust and do not have. You murder and covet and cannot obtain. You fight and war, yet you do not have because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask amiss, that you may spend it on your own pleasures. Again, that was the book of James, chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. God doesn't bless a heart that's hardened by guilt and shame. He blesses a heart that cries out and confesses guilt and shame. And that brings us back to Psalm 107 and this causal relationship between us and God. When we recognize and confess our selfishness, when we confess our transactional view of people or God, when we turn from our foolish and proud ways and cry to God for mercy, He responds. When the storms in our hearts and the ones out in the Atlantic threaten to overwhelm us, we have a God who answers sincere hearts crying out to Him for mercy. This phrase is repeated 4 times in Psalm 107. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and He delivered them out of their distresses. People cried out first, and God delivered. The simplest way to think of this is when you go to Matthew and you read the words of the Lord Himself. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be opened to you. Recognize a pattern? There's a verb. We ask, we seek, and we knock. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it will be opened. Matthew 7, 7 and 8. God says over and over, ask in faith and He will respond. Ask in humility and He will respond. Ask in meekness and He will respond. Obey and He will see it and honor it in His timing and in the manner of His blessing. Let us both ask and act in humility, meekness, and faith today, trusting God for His answer in His time. Godspeed and God bless.